We are joined this time around by the winners of this year's Imagine Cup. So, joined by Arjun and Daniel, who are going to talk about how they're using AI to solve some problems that people with low vision face. So, take it away.
Thank you.
All right. Show of hands. How many of you guys have seen a solar eclipse in real life? Okay. And I'm noticing that none of you are blind, so I'm assuming you use some sort of protective eyewear. Well, when you put those on, you would probably know how difficult it is to see in a setting like this. You'd probably be unable to see anything, really. And this is the reality for over 200 million people worldwide. And among those include our grandparents who have uncorrectable visual impairments. And this is kind of what really motivated and got us going for Argus. So we're going to show you a live demo first.
We're going to give it a second to turn on, and we're just going to try. Argus, which one's the Red Bull can and which one is the coffee cup? And we'll see if it grabbed that.
Sure. The can in your left hand is a Red Bull, and the cup in your right hand is coffee.
Yay. All right. So live demo worked. Incredible stuff. And you guys can come up and ask us to try a bunch of random stuff to make sure it's not hard-coded. Happy to do that. All right.
Hey Argus, what am I looking at?
You are looking at a room with several wooden tables and chairs.
Okay.
Argus, what's the room number and what are the names on the door?
We can do it after. Yeah.
The room number is 306. The names are Francisco Cirilo and 𝗬𝗓𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗏.
Argus, what pills am I holding?
Sure. You are holding a bottle of ibuprofen, 200 milligrams tablets. There are also 2 green bottles nearby.
Oh, almost interrupted it. So those are all scenarios that our grandparents have faced in real life. Taking medication, figuring out which dorm room is ours. These are real life problems that Argus is able to address. So just to add some interaction here, and this is for a prize. We're going to be handing out our Imagine Cup pins to people who guess it correct.
Or a nice cold Red Bull, if someone wants that.
One or the other. So, show of hands. How many of you think that, so these are percentages for what your guess would be for how many people get visual impairments later in life. Show of hand for 1%. Or 15%. Okay, we have one. 20%.
We have 5, 6, okay.
Yeah, and then 30%.
Okay.
All right. Well, the right answer was 20. The 30 was to throw you off. So whoever guessed that correct, he can come up.
Come up and get an Imagine Cup pin afterwards.
All right. So as we described before, these are some of the visual impairments and some of the POVs that people with macular degeneration, cataracts, which my grandma has, and diabetic retinopathy. So hundreds of millions of people worldwide suffer from these problems. And we realized that there was nothing really on the market that directly addressed the needs of those with visual impairments. You might think of something like Meta Ray-Bans, but those are more of like I think Matt has one actually. They're more of a, he's over there. It's more of a novelty where it's like, if you want to augment a certain aspect of your experience, you can, but it's not something great for something like someone like my grandma who isn't as tech literate or doesn't want to have to worry about recharging them every 2 hours. So yeah.
So I think we'll talk a little about the Argus device that we've made now, which of course is to help people like our grandparents in everyday tasks like identifying objects, like navigating the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it has 3 main components, right? We have the camera module, which it's on my glasses right now. And we have AI models, which I'll talk a little bit more about the technical details in the coming slides. And they're brought together by this thing that we call the compute module, which you can see a photo of on the screen. And this compute module runs these AI models both locally and connects to the cloud to run our hybrid model. But before that, I'll talk a little bit about how the camera and compute module really come together. You want to hit the next slide, Daniel?
Got it.
Yeah. So we use this technology called YR. And so what is YR, right? It's a word that most of you have probably never heard of, but it uses your skin as a wireless transmission medium where it basically takes a couple of capacitors and it charges and discharges them really fast in order to send bitrate. And you're able to somehow detect that on other parts of your body. And so we use that to connect from the camera module to the compute module. It uses 100 times less power than traditional Wi-Fi. And so what this really enables Argus to do is have this camera module have a 10-hour battery life while being just a couple grams, right? This prototype that I have on my glasses right now is about 3 times as heavy as we estimate the final version of Argus to be once we actually go through like production and scaling it down a little bit. Now, on the on the compute module, yeah, so we use a hybrid model of edge and cloud AI models. And so on the edge, we're using sparse state space models for local voice processing. And so these models are pretty optimized for voice recognition and not too much else. And then on image processing, we're using convolutional neural networks. And I know some of you might be thinking, like, why are you doing that, right? Like, that's so a couple of years ago. And the real reason for that is just the fact that there aren't really many good transformer edge AI accelerators. And so the way that we're structuring this on like the hardware side on the compute module is we have a relatively weak processor in the center of it. And then we have these edge AI accelerators for both these like state space models and convolutional neural networks to actually accelerate the AI and make that happen. Anything I forgot there?
And then, of course, you have the cloud option where you could simply press a button on the glasses. It'll connect you to the cloud, and you'll be able to ask GPT-4o what exactly is going on in the image. If it's a more complex task that goes beyond the scope of, oh, what is the sign like red or green? Like, is it good to go now? Or how do I like read this? So for more complex tasks that are involving more so work or academics, this is what you're able to engage an agent for.
Yeah, and so just a couple notes there. We're using Azure AI Foundry for that. Like on that side, and the technical side, it's pretty standard. We're just using GPT right now for the cloud modeling because that seems to be a very well-trained and relatively unbiased model that we can use. And then on another question that pretty commonly comes up is how are you going to deal with software updates? Because keeping a model up to date on the edge is especially hard. But that's why Argus has a built-in SIM card in order to be able to like both connect to the cloud wherever you are, so you don't have to deal with like entering a Wi-Fi password for the building you're in, and then also receiving updates from our servers in the future. Great. Now, I think talking a little bit about ethics and inclusive design. So one of the things that really makes Argus secure is actually the use of YR, because in order to intercept a signal, someone would have to come up and like touch you and have like their own specific hardware to intercept YR. So like it's quite hard to actually intercept the data that's being transmitted between the camera and compute module, unlike ones where like they could just get within a couple feet of you and figure that out. And our data can stay local, right? Like all the facial recognition data is going to be staying local, never uploaded to the cloud. And that means that people don't have to worry about like being recorded as much with Argus. And we can use our convolutional neural networks to detect faces and actually blur them before we upload them to Azure, so that there's no real data risks with response to privacy. And then, of course, we also have multilingual support for Argus. We've tested in a couple of languages, but this is really just a thing of having our models be agnostic to different languages.
I stole your thunder a little bit for differentiation, but anything you want to add on this?
I mean, I guess I know a lot of you must know about Meta Ray-Bans, right? Like, they're all the rage, but like, I wouldn't give those to my grandpa, right? There's a couple of reasons for that, right? It kind of comes down to the fact that Argus just works, whereas with Meta Ray-Bans, you need to have a cellular connection in order to actually use them. So if you're in the middle of nowhere and like my grandpa needs to like understand how to cross the road, the color of the traffic light, he just kind of can't do that with Ray-Bans. And that's one of the things that's a big differentiator. The other one is it just is seamless, where with other devices, you have to have a phone or some other way of like connecting them. You have to deal with like connecting your Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, and you really just have to do a lot of setup. And a lot of our target audience here is elderly people who are aging into visual impairments, who like don't want to learn Braille or like a completely new way of life in order to exist happily. And having to like deal with like your phone as someone who's that old and has to deal with like that much technology is just a pain. So keeping it seamless with our own hardware really makes Argus something that can blend into life rather than have to be something they have to actively think about.
And on that note, we also have accessibility specific features such as haptics, where we have a time of flight sensor that points forward, one that does 45 degrees down. The one that's forward is obviously for walls, and then the one that goes down is for ledges or steps. So it's not something you have to actively think about, or you would want to actively think about when you're just going day-to-day life. You don't want to be thinking, oh, am I about to bump into a wall? So these are things that we want them to have to like actively think about and ask. So I guess just to wrap up, so why Argus? Well, I think I could just leave you with a 3-word catchphrase that our mentors helped us come up with. One of them sitting in the audience right now. Yeah, but it's smart, seamless, and secure. Thank you.